Ghostbusters is headed for looks like a $70 million loss for this 2016 version. Sequel unlikely. At first, before the movie was coming out, they said, "Oh yeah, we have a sequel planned." This happens a lot. It happened with Fantastic Four remake, where after that first week or two, they're like, the talks of sequels usually sort of quietly dies out, and they're kind of like, all right. So, if you look at Ghostbusters on Box Office Mojo, let's see where it's at right now. But Ghostbusters, like a lot of these movies, Suicide Squad, Batman v Superman, they do pretty well the first weekend. A lot of times, the marketing, that's the first weekend. You have your fucking Papa John's commercial, Flow and Progressive, which actually was a pretty funny commercial for Ghostbusters. That's all good and dandy. But it's always critical response, and word of mouth is even more important than critical response. People telling their friends about the movie, getting them back to the theater, second and third viewings. That's how these blockbusters do well. So the production budget on Ghostbusters was $144 million.
Oh, yipes.
I'll say, again, this is Pat guessing, we'll just say even the marketing was at least $100 million. I saw them advertise this during the NBA fucking finals with Kobe Bryant. That wasn't cheap to do that. Everywhere else. We'll just say $250 million to market this sucker and to make it. It's made 193 worldwide. I'll just say, we'll just add another, for shits and giggles, another 25 million. There's a few markets that hasn't come out yet. We'll just say 240 million when it's all said and done. I saw estimates saying it won't even hit 225. We'll say 240 million. We'll say conservatively, it's going to get 50% of that. It probably won't. We'll say 120 million goes back to the studio, which means what's all said and done, this might even lose more than 70 million when it's all said and done. It might lose 100 million. That's what you're looking at. So you're not going to see a sequel to Ghostbusters.
They're at least not a live action one. I mean, that's the thing. That's kind of been swept under the rug. And what they're talking about now is an animated Ghostbusters feature, maybe 2019, an animated TV series, another cartoon. Both of those are supposedly going to be guided by Reitman. So Feig is out of the picture, apparently. That's what they seem to be saying. So it seems like the reboot, whatever direction they were going to take it in, is kind of being stopped, curtailed.
It's been shuttered.
Yeah, it's been shuttered. And it doesn't seem like they want to stop pushing forward with keeping Ghostbusters in the modern eye, but they're no longer going forward with this vision of it. And when you and I were talking earlier, I mean, in retrospect, it really doesn't matter if this had been an all-female cast or an all-male cast. It just seemed like it didn't really seem like the heart was necessarily in it either.
Oh. This goes back.
We talked. The first. You said it. The first movie was lightning in a bottle. The sequel, I think, proved. The original sequel proved that the first movie was lightning in a bottle. It's not the female cast. It's not an all-male cast would have made this better. The second movie in the franchise didn't even impress.
The second movie,
I like it well enough, but it didn't impress that many people. It's the first movie.
The second movie did 215, not adjusted, 215 million, which is a lot. But the first one did 242 5 years earlier. So that's already a drop-off.
Right.
Of about 25% drop-off to the sequel. So you couldn't do a sequel to this movie, even if it was 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it actually did pretty well on Rotten Tomatoes, which we'll get into. It did like 70%. Because these sequels don't usually do better. They usually, for very specific cases, do sequels do better to these films. But for the most part, they stay standard or they drop below. So you could, even if you thought this was going to do better, it wouldn't do better enough to break even unless you cut the budget in half on this movie. Mm-hmm. I'm shocked that the budget was this big on this Ghostbusters movie. I'm shocked. It was 144 million. So what you have is a comedy horror action film, which is a genre you do not see often at all.
No.
Already comedies, it's hard for comedies to make a lot of money. That's why a lot of comedies are really cheap. Because they don't cost a lot. You don't need special effects. You get Adam Sandler and pals. Pixels. Pixels is the biggest one I can think of where you have a lot of special effects and Adam Sandler. I'm going to see how that did in a second. But Pixels is a different scenario. Entirely. So Pixels did, let's see. Pixels didn't do great either. Pixels did worldwide. Okay, it did 244 worldwide, which is pretty good. Domestically, it did not do well. Domestically, it did only 88. It did double foreign, which I'm like shocked at. It did 244. Let's say the production. Here's what save it. The production budget was almost half of Ghostbusters. Production budget was only 88 versus 144.
Okay.
So that's a huge difference. But even when you factor in, it's 88 million. We'll say the marketing was huge in that too. We'll just say it cost, I don't know, 140 million with that. So that barely probably either broke even or lost a little bit of money. And that's an Adam Sandler movie who was still big, and it had Kevin James, and you get the families to see it, and it costs less than Ghostbusters. So when you're doing these comedies, when you're doing a $150 million budgeted comedy, before you throw in marketing, that's a huge financial risk. Huge. You're going to expect it to do better. Well, if you adjust the gross, 240 in 1984, it's probably double now. It's probably 500 million. So you're looking for a movie to do just as well as the original, with a whole new cast, women or men, that they said is a fucking reboot and not even a soft sequel, and you're pissing off the fan base. So you throw all together and disaster. And that's not even on the director, that's on Amy Pascal at Sony for greenlighting it. And pushing, if you look at all those emails, they push Ivan Reitman out of that film entirely for his creative input. They said, we want Reitman, we don't want him anywhere near this. And that's what happens. So you can say, well, this was a case of, there was people that didn't like women, didn't want to see it. I would just argue this was just a bad idea to begin with. And even if you had fucking, hell, if you had Adam Sandler in the role, because he just did Pixels, and that was what, Sony too, right? Adam Sandler and Kevin James, and you had them come out, the movie would have done just the same, if not worse. I don't think it would have done better. So I
think if you had fucking Adam Sandler and Kevin James, it would have done worse.
But that's who you probably would have got.
Yeah.
And you would have been in the same exact spot you are now. And you're going to get, what is it, Ecto Force coming out in a few years? You're going to have a Ghostbusters Ecto Force, which is going to be early 2018. You're going to get an animated series, and those will probably be a hell of a lot fucking better than this.